To escape the loneliness of her gilded cage, tech billionaire Adriana Kole gives up everything to find true love, a journey that forces her to prove that a person's real worth lies not in their fortune, but in the kindness of their heart. The story begins on a glamorous night, beneath the crystal chandeliers of the city's most lavish ballroom. It's the 10th anniversary gala for MedTech, the medical technology empire Adriana Kole built with her own hands. At 32, she is everything one could admire, a queen of Silicon Valley with striking beauty, a brilliant mind, and a vast fortune. Dressed in a dazzling gown, Adriana is the center of the universe tonight, yet her smile never quite reaches her eyes. She feels like a prized exhibit in a gilded cage of her own making. Every relationship is transactional, every friend circling her sees only an opportunity, a stepping stone to greatness. But tonight, she allows herself to hope. Her heart pounds with anticipation as her handsome boyfriend, Evan, takes the stage. The entire ballroom falls silent, all eyes fixed on him. Adriana holds her breath, her hands clasped together. She has been waiting for this moment, for a proposal, a genuine commitment that would finally thaw the icy wall around her heart. Evan takes the microphone, his charismatic smile aimed directly at Adriana. "Ladies and gentlemen," he begins, his voice booming, "I want to say a few words to the most incredible woman I've ever known, Adriana Kole." Hope surges through her. "This is it. Adriana, you are phenomenal," Evan continues. "Brilliant, talented, and powerful." He pauses, his smile fading, and that is precisely the problem. The air in the room freezes. Adriana's smile is fixed on her face, a brittle mask. "I once thought I could stand beside you." Evan's voice turns cold, distant. "But I can't stand living in the shadow of a woman who is just too powerful. So, in front of everyone, I want to say, we're done." A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. Instantly, hundreds of phones are raised, their flashes going off relentlessly, like 1,000 daggers aimed straight at Adriana, exposing her pain for the world to see. Humiliation, shame, and devastation wash over her, threatening to drown her. Evan steps down from the stage, walking past her coolly as if she were a stranger. Amid the whispers and curious stares, Adriana stands alone. Her triumphant anniversary party has, in an instant, become the stage for the most crushing defeat of her life. In the days following that fateful night, Adriana holed herself up in her penthouse. Its haunting silence stood in stark contrast to the media storm raging outside. She turned off her phone and disconnected from the internet, but the vicious headlines and the images of herself with that frozen smile still haunted her. One morning, she stood before the large mirror in her walk-in closet, surrounded by hundreds of expensive outfits. She stared at her reflection, a woman who had everything, yet was utterly empty. "What do you really have, Adriana?" she whispered to herself. "Power? Money? Or an empty heart and a line of people ready to exploit you?" The brutal truth hit her like a slap in the face. She realized that if she continued to live in this world, she would forever be just a commodity, valued in stocks and contracts. She needed to get out. No, not a vacation. An escape. The next day, Adriana called an emergency board meeting. She walked into the conference room, her expression calm but resolute, and faced the most powerful figures at MedTech. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and laced with steel, "I will be taking a temporary leave from my position as CEO for 6 months, effective next week." The room immediately erupted in a low murmur. Mr. Chen, an elderly major shareholder, was the first to object. 6 months? Adriana, that's unthinkable. Do you have any idea how the market will react? The stock will plummet. Marcus, her vice president and the man she trusted most, spoke with concern. "Adriana, I know you're under immense pressure, but leaving now is too risky. Perhaps we should." "There are no perhapses, Marcus." Adriana cut him off, her gaze meeting his, a look of both trust and finality. "It's because I know MedTech better than anyone that I know this is necessary. A machine needs maintenance, and so do I. I trust you to steer this ship brilliantly." She then turned to the entire board. "This isn't a discussion, it's an announcement." Silence fell over the room. The authority in her voice had extinguished all protest. Back home, Adriana set her plan in motion. She wouldn't disguise herself as a poor person. That's just another role to play. she told herself as she scrolled past articles about billionaires going undercover to test people. I'm so tired of playing a part. I just want to be real, to learn how to live like a normal person. She sold her supercar, locked her jewelry away in a bank vault, and packed a few simple cotton outfits into an old backpack. On the day she left, only her longtime assistant saw her to the door. "Miss Kole, are you absolutely sure about this?" the assistant asked, her voice filled with worry. "If you need anything at all." Adriana placed a hand on her shoulder, a genuine smile gracing her lips for the first time in days. "Thank you. But this time, I need to handle this myself." Driving the used, ordinary car she had just bought out of the city, Adriana watched the skyscrapers shrink in her rearview mirror. A feeling of both terrifying and breathtaking freedom washed over her. For the first time in over a decade, the road ahead was completely uncertain, and she had no map in her hands. Her journey to learn how to live had truly begun. Adriana drove for days with no destination in mind. She headed toward the sunrise, leaving the shadows of the city and her old life behind. She passed through small towns and vast, open fields, but none of them beckoned her to stay. Then one afternoon, as the salty scent of the ocean began to drift through her car window, she knew she had found where she needed to be. Her destination was Port Blossom, a small seaside town seemingly forgotten by the modern world. There were no skyscrapers or luxury boutiques here, only pastel-colored wooden houses, small shops with weathered wooden signs, and an old pier where fishing boats bobbed gently on the waves. She parked in front of a small cafe with a "for rent" sign in the window. Inside, a kindly old woman with silver-white hair smiled at her. "Hello, dear. How can I help you?" "Hello. I saw the sign for the rental. I'm looking for a place to stay. Temporarily," Adriana said, trying to keep her voice casual. "Oh, you're in luck. I have a small cabin up on the hill, overlooking the ocean. It's a bit old, but very peaceful." The old woman led her to see the place. The cabin was just as she'd described it, small and rustic, with the scents of pine and sea breeze mingling in the air. It was the complete opposite of her glamorous but soulless penthouse. Standing on the porch, gazing out at the deep blue ocean stretching to the horizon, Adriana felt a weight lift from her chest for the first time in a long, long time. "I'll take it," she said without a moment's hesitation. "My name is Adi." "Adi," the old woman repeated with a gentle smile. "That's a lovely name. Welcome to Port Blossom." After settling in, Adriana realized she needed something to do. She couldn't just stare at the ocean all day. During a walk along the shore, she stumbled upon the Port Blossom Marine Conservation Center. It was a small, humble facility with a few tanks and an exhibit for children. A sign, "Now hiring, part-time guide," was posted neatly on the door. Without a second thought, she walked in. The woman in charge, Maria, looked her up and down with a skeptical eye. "Do you have any experience in this field?" Maria asked bluntly. "No, I don't," Adriana admitted honestly, "but I'm a fast learner, and I truly love the ocean." Maria raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "This job isn't just smiling and walking around. You'd be cleaning tanks, preparing food for the animals, and answering a million questions from hyper kids. And the pay isn't great." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Adriana insisted, a sincerity in her voice that surprised even herself. "Please, just give me a chance." Perhaps it was the earnestness in Adi's eyes that swayed Maria. She sighed. "All right, a 1-week trial period. Be here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." That evening, Adriana sat alone in her wooden cabin. For the first time in her life, she cooked herself a simple dinner of pasta and tomato sauce from the local grocery store. No private chef, no housekeeping staff. Just her and the sound of the waves whispering outside. A pang of loneliness hit her, but it was different from the crushing loneliness of her penthouse. This was the solitude of a new beginning, a necessary quietness to finally hear herself think. Tomorrow, she would start her first real job without using the name Adriana Kole. She was just Adi, a trainee guide, and for some reason, that made her smile. Adriana's new life in Port Blossom settled into a peaceful rhythm. By day, she kept busy at the conservation center, finding an unexpected joy in scrubbing glass tanks and telling stories about sea turtles to children. But when dusk fell and the town grew quiet, a familiar loneliness would creep into her small cabin. She realized she needed more than work. She needed connection. So one evening, upon seeing a flyer for the Wednesday night community dance class at the local community center, she decided to give it a try. The community center was a world away from the glamorous ballrooms she was used to. The wooden floor was worn, and a lively salsa tune crackled from the speakers as everyone, from teenagers to middle-aged couples, laughed and chatted in their everyday clothes. Adriana, or Addie, felt a bit out of place and self-conscious. She huddled in a corner, awkwardly mimicking the steps of the other dancers. Suddenly, a warm, deep voice spoke beside her. "Don't overthink it. Just let the music lead." She turned. It was Leo, the class instructor. He was tall, with the lean, toned build of a dancer and a radiant smile that could melt away any hesitation. He gently placed a hand on her waist, taking her other hand in his. "Relax your shoulders," he murmured, guiding her to the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, see, you're a natural." Under Leo's guidance, Adriana's body began to relax. For the first time in years, she was moving not to impress, but simply to enjoy herself. After the class, Leo offered to buy her a lemonade. "I've never seen you here before," he said, the smile still on his face. "Addie, right? Definitely not a local." "I just moved here," Adriana replied, a pleasant warmth spreading through her chest. "I was looking for a change." "Well, you came to the right place," Leo said with a wink. They began to see each other more often after class, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for walks along the beach. Leo told her about his passion, his dream of opening a professional dance studio that could inspire the whole town. Adriana listened, captivated. She saw a passionate fire in him that she rarely encountered in the men from her world. She started to believe that maybe, in this place, she could actually find a genuine connection. That hope lasted for exactly 3 weeks. One evening, Leo took her to dinner at the nicest restaurant in town. He wore a sharp dress shirt, a stark contrast to his usual casual look. "So, Addie," he began after the main course, his tone more serious, "I feel like we have a special connection, and I can tell you're a very sophisticated woman, someone with vision." Adriana smiled, her heart beating a little faster. "Thank you, Leo. That's why I want to share this with you," he continued, pulling a portfolio from his briefcase. He slid it across the table. "This is the business plan for the studio I told you about, perfect down to the last detail, location, design, marketing strategy. The only thing missing, as you know, is the capital." The smile vanished from Adriana's lips. She looked at the portfolio, then back up at Leo. His expression was no longer one of simple admiration. It was the expectant look of a salesman pitching his product. "I don't understand, Leo. Why are you showing me this?" Leo chuckled, a calculated sound. "Come on, Addie. I don't know what your story is, but I can spot someone with potential. You're not like the others here. A small initial investment, say $50,000, to get the project off the ground. For someone like you, that's just pocket change, right? Think of it as a partnership. We'd be the perfect power couple in business." And Adriana didn't hear the rest. A familiar, cold dread ran down her spine. There it was again, the numbers, the plans, the investments. Even when she was just Addie, a part-time employee, people could somehow still sniff out the potential for exploitation in her. She gently pushed the portfolio back. "Leo, I think you've misunderstood," she said, her voice calm but distant. "I came to Port Blossom to find a simple life, not a business opportunity. Thank you for dinner." She stood up and left, leaving Leo sitting there with a stunned look on his face. As she walked out of the restaurant, the cold sea breeze felt no match for the iciness in her heart. That night, Adriana sat alone on her porch, staring out at the endless ocean. This loneliness felt even worse than the night Evan had left her. She had given up everything, the money, the power, the fame, but they seemed to be an invisible ghost that clung to her, shaping how people saw her. Adriana bitterly realized the harsh truth. No matter how far she ran, no matter how normal she tried to be, to many people, she would never be a person. She was just an opportunity. After these stumbles, a weary bitterness settled over Adriana. She put up an invisible defensive wall, resolving not to open her heart to anyone else. She threw herself into her work at the conservation center as a form of escape, caring for the silent sea creatures who demanded nothing, judged nothing, calculated nothing, became the only balm for her soul. She found peace in the simple, manual labor, scrubbing the large tanks, preparing food for the turtles, or quietly watching a tiny seahorse float in the water. It was during these days of self-imposed isolation that she began to notice Noah. He wasn't new. Noah had been working there for a long time, but due to their different schedules and Adriana's reserved nature, they had rarely crossed paths. He was a marine biologist who spent most of his time either conducting research offshore or working in the lab out back. The first time Adriana truly saw him was one morning when a group of elementary school students came for a tour. She was in the back preparing food for the turtles when she heard a warm, passionate voice. Looking up, she saw Noah kneeling in the middle of a circle of children, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as he told them about the journey of a baby sea turtle. "Did you know," he said, his hands mimicking the shape of a swimming turtle, "that as soon as this little guy hatches from his egg, he has to face the vast ocean all by himself. No parents to guide him, yet he knows exactly where to swim. That's instinct. It's one of nature's miracles." The children listened, spellbound, completely captivated by his story. Adriana watched silently from a distance. Noah was unlike anyone she had ever met. He wore a faded t-shirt and a pair of khaki shorts dotted with a few stains. His hair was slightly tousled by the sea breeze, and his skin was tan from long days under the Sunday. He lacked Evan's polished exterior, Leo's calculated smile, and Mr. Davison's artificial charm. What radiated from him was an earthy authenticity, a rugged simplicity, and a pure love for his work. After the children left, Noah headed toward Adriana's station to grab some tools. He saw her and smiled, a natural, unadorned smile. "Hi, you're Addy, right?" he asked, his voice still holding the warmth from his talk with the kids. Adriana, slightly startled, nodded. "Yes, that's me. I'm Noah. Thanks for prepping the turtle food. They seem to be loving it," he said, and then turned back to his task, not asking a single question about who she was, where she came from, or what she did for a living. That indifference, ironically, was what impressed Adriana the most. For the first time, she had met a man whose curiosity wasn't directed at her, but at the work, at the creatures they both cared for. He didn't sniff out anything about her. To him, she was simply Addy, the new colleague. From that day on, she began to observe him more. She saw him engrossed in his work for hours in the lab, patiently explaining the harm of plastic waste to visitors, and quietly mending an old net by himself. He lived a simple, passionate, and meaningful life, and in his small world, there seemed to be no room for schemes of money or status. Slowly, the defensive wall that Adriana had so carefully built began to show its first cracks. In the following days, Adriana and Noah's interactions remained sparse, but their quality changed. He never asked about her past or commented on her appearance. Instead, his acknowledgement came in very different ways. Once, while she was struggling to fix the pump for a small tank, Noah walked by. Instead of doing it for her, he just stood and watched for a few seconds. "Try turning the pressure valve counterclockwise," he suggested. "It tends to get stuck there." Adriana did, and the pump whirred to life. He just gave a satisfied nod. "Nice job," he said, and walked away. That brief compliment, focused on her competence and nothing else, meant more to her than 1,000 flowery words she had ever heard. She realized that Noah was watching her, not with curiosity, but with the respect of a fellow professional. He didn't seem to care who she was, where she was from, or what secrets she held. He only valued Addy, the diligent woman who arrived earliest and left latest, who would spend hours patiently scrubbing algae off a turtle's shell, and whose eyes lit up when talking about the ocean, however limited her knowledge was. To him, her worth was in what she did, not the name she carried. The real turning point came late one afternoon, as the wind began to pick up. The center got an urgent call from a local fisherman. He'd spotted a large sea turtle, entangled in a ghost net, a discarded fishing net left to drift in the ocean, becoming a deadly trap. He said it's near Seagull's Point, and the animal is very weak, Noah said quickly to Maria, already grabbing a rescue kit. "I need one more person." No one else was there but Adriana. She stepped forward without hesitation. "I'll go." Noah looked at her, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "The waves are rough out there. This won't be easy." "I know, but I can help," she asserted, her gaze steady. Noah didn't say another word. He just nodded and tossed her a life vest. The center's small boat bucked and plunged over the white-capped waves. The wind whipped at their faces, and the cold sea spray soaked them both. When they arrived, the sight was heartbreaking. A massive sea turtle, perhaps 100 years old, was desperately struggling in a thick tangle of nylon mesh. The net had cut deeply into one of its flippers, leaving a gruesome wound. "Hold it steady," Noah yelled over the roar of the waves. "I'll anchor the boat. You use this knife to cut the main lines." Adriana used all her strength, one hand gripping the slippery shell, while the other carefully worked the sharp blade under the taut lines. The terrified animal thrashed violently, nearly knocking her overboard, but she held on. She saw the pain in its ancient eyes, and that gave her strength. For nearly an hour, they worked as a single unit. There was no superfluous talk, only Noah's clipped commands and Adriana's intuitive responses. He held, she cut. He pulled, she untangled. Sweat, tears, and seawater mingled on her face. Finally, the last strand of the net was severed. The great turtle, free at last, dove deep into the turquoise water and vanished. They both collapsed onto the floor of the boat, gasping for air, exhausted and drenched. Silence. Only the sound of the waves and the whistling wind. Then Noah turned to her, and for the first time, Adriana saw something new in his eyes, a deep, genuine admiration. He didn't say thank you. He simply reached out and gently brushed a stray, wet strand of hair from her cheek. In that moment, under the fading light of the sunset, Adriana had a revelation. Love, a true connection, didn't come from eloquent speeches at fancy parties, from promises of mutual benefit, or from flattering compliments about fame. It came from this, from two people fighting together for something bigger than themselves. It came from action, not words. The weeks following the sea turtle rescue were the happiest Adriana had ever known. The wall of ice between her and Noah had melted away, replaced by a quiet but profound bond. They didn't need declarations of love. Their affection was shown in the simple lunches they shared on the pier, the knowing glances they exchanged at work, and the evening strolls along the beach where Noah would point out the names of different seabirds and explain the changing tides. Adriana had completely forgotten who she was supposed to be. She was Adi, the girl who loved the ocean, who found joy in the little things, and who was slowly learning to trust in a love that asked for nothing in return. For the first time in her life, she felt truly seen and valued for who she was. She had let her guard down completely. And that's when disaster struck. It started like any other morning. Adriana woke to the sound of birdsong and the smell of coffee she'd brewed herself. But when she stepped out of her cabin to head to work, she noticed something was off. The old landlady, who usually waved to her each morning, now just stared with a look of curiosity mixed with apprehension. A few neighbors huddled together, whispering, and fell silent the moment they saw her. A sense of unease crept over her. When she stopped by the small grocery store to pick up a few things, she understood everything. There on the newsstand, splashed across the front page of a notorious tabloid, was her own face, a candid photo of her scrubbing a tank at the center, sweat glistening on her forehead. Next to it was an old, glamorous, and powerful photo of Adriana Kole at a product launch. The headline was mercilessly sensational: Silicon Valley Queen in Hiding, the double life of billionaire Adriana Kole in a remote fishing village. Her heart stopped. Her entire world imploded in that single moment. Her phone, the cheap burner she'd bought when she arrived, began to buzz violently with calls from her assistant, from the board of directors. But she didn't care about them. There was only one name in her head: Noah. She rushed to the conservation center. The scene was chaotic. A few unfamiliar cars were parked outside, clearly belonging to paparazzi. Inside, Maria and her other colleagues looked at her with unreadable expressions. She bolted toward the lab, where she knew Noah would be. She found him standing motionless in the middle of the room, holding a tablet, the screen displaying that very article. His face no longer held its familiar warmth. It was as cold as ice, set with a mixture of fury and deep disappointment. "Noah," she breathed, her voice cracking. I can explain." He looked up at her, and his gaze was a physical blow. It was the look of a complete stranger. "Explain," he said, his voice low and sharp. Explain what? That the name Adi was a lie, that these past few months were just a game for you, a vacation for a bored billionaire. No, it wasn't like that. Adriana stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. Adi is the real me. The person you know. The person I knew was a hard-working, simple woman. He cut her off, his voice rising with anger. The woman on this screen is the CEO of MedTech, a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They are not the same. He angrily swiped the tablet off. Do you have any idea what people like you, what corporations like yours, do? Adriana froze. The beach where I grew up, Noah continued, his voice now trembling with a long-suppressed pain. It used to be the most beautiful place on earth, until a massive corporation came, built a factory, and dumped their waste into the ocean. They destroyed it. They killed the ecosystem, killed my childhood, all for the sake of profit. And they called it progress. He stared directly into her eyes, and in his, she saw the raw wound of someone who had been betrayed to their very core. I have hated the super-rich my entire life. I hate how they treat the world like their personal playground, and I was stupid enough to believe you were different. I let you into my life while you were just playing a part. Noah, please, don't say my name, he said, turning his back on her, a final, brutal gesture. The game is over, Miss Kole. Go back to your world, and please, just leave me alone. Noah had turned his back, and Adriana's world fell silent once again, but this time, the silence didn't paralyze her. The pain was there, sharp and aching, but beneath it lay a fierce resolve she never knew she had. She had found something worth fighting for, someone worth proving everything to. She would not give up. 2 days later, she went to Noah's small house at the end of the coastal road. He was sitting on the porch mending an old net, his face etched with exhaustion and grief. When he saw her, he shot to his feet, his eyes cold. What else do you want, Miss Kole? He used her last name like a weapon. A wall between them. I didn't come to explain with words anymore, Adriana said, her voice trembling but firm. I came to show you. Please, just give me 1 hour, that's all. After that, if you still want me to leave, I'll never bother you again. Something in her pleading eyes, an undeniable sincerity, made Noah hesitate. He stared at her for a long moment before giving a reluctant nod. 1 hour. Adriana said nothing more, silently leading him to her car. She drove out of town and down a bumpy, little-known dirt road that opened up to a secluded cove sheltered by cliffs. There, tucked away among the trees, was a small, unassuming research facility. It had no flashy signs, just a few large tanks and a modest lab. As they entered, an elderly scientist with a full head of white hair greeted them with a smile. Miss Kole, what a pleasant surprise to see you here. Noah froze. He knew this man. It was Dr. Alistair Finch, one of the most respected oceanographers in his field. Adriana turned to Noah, her heart pounding. I established this foundation 5 years ago, under a different name. No one knows where the funding comes from, she explained softly. We study coral reef restoration and run a rescue and breeding program for endangered sea turtles. I didn't do this for publicity. It's not a PR stunt for MedTech. I did it because I love the ocean, and because I believe that those with the means have a responsibility to protect it. She gestured toward the crystal-clear tanks where juvenile coral reefs were thriving and hundreds of tiny turtle hatchlings were swimming about. This, she said, her voice choking with emotion as she looked directly into Noah's eyes, laying her soul bare. This is the real me, not those glossy magazine articles. Noah was speechless. He looked from the passionate research projects to the esteemed doctor, then back to the woman standing before him. The anger and prejudice inside him slowly crumbled, replaced by an overwhelming wave of emotion. He had been wrong. He had let the pain of his past blind him. This woman wasn't just a billionaire. She was Adi, his hard-working colleague. And she was also the person who had secretly used her fortune to do the exact work he had dedicated his entire life to. She was a woman with a kind heart. He stepped forward, the distance between them no longer a chasm. Why didn't you tell me? Because for the first time in my life, Adriana said, tears streaming down her cheeks. I wanted someone to see me, not my money. Noah gently reached up and wiped away her tears, the gesture just as tender as it had been on the boat that day. I'm so sorry, he whispered. The story closes on a brilliant sunset. On a deserted beach, Adriana and Noah are together, placing the turtle hatchlings from her project onto the sand. They kneel side by side, silently watching as the tiny but resilient creatures instinctively crawl with all their might toward the vast ocean where they belong. As the last turtle disappears into the golden, shimmering waves, Noah gently takes Adriana's hand. They say nothing, simply sharing a smile. The sunset envelops them, not as a symbol of an ending, but of a new beginning for a love that was tested by the storm and found its safe harbor in sincerity.